Hi students, Mr. Paul here. I have your video notes for the first half of section 28.3, the war. Initially, I want to deal with the question, how was the Schlieffen Plan meant to work and why did it fail? You might want to keep your World War I map handy as you prepare these notes, read this section. It will help explain some of the movements of these warring nations. Please make sure that you have read 28.3 and taken your best notes on it. By the fall of 1914, most of the major nations of Europe had chosen their sides and declared war on their opponents based on the alliances that go back dozens of years. Many of these nations, as an outgrowth of militarism, had long-standing war plans. They'd been planning for conflict with these neighbors for a long time. One of these plans was the Schlieffen Plan. This was the German plan to deal with both Russia and France, and it went in a very simple way like this. Russia, having been slow to industrialize and being a huge country geographically, the Germans assumed that Russia would be slow to mobilize their army for war. So the Schlieffen Plan involved defeating France first, to move quickly and decisively against France, to try to invade and capture Paris quickly, and then turn and reallocate resources to fight the Russians in the east. When the Schlieffen Plan was implemented in the beginning of 1914, the Germans did exactly what they'd been planning to do for years. They raced across Belgium, headed for Paris. Remember that this is what provokes the British into joining the war against the Germans. Belgian forces and British forces slowed the German advance more than the Germans had anticipated. And it allowed the French forces the opportunity to fall back and regroup and prepare to defend Paris, which they did. The German army came within miles of Paris. The French halted them in the battle at the Marne. The Russians on the Eastern Front mobilized much faster than Germany had expected. They did not mobilize well. They were a bit reckless, they were a bit hasty, they were a bit underprepared, but they got their army into the field quickly, which meant that the Germans had to pull two whole divisions away from their battles with France to go defend against the Russian pressure from the east. The Germans did inflict a major defeat to the Russian army, and that was at Tannenberg. But at this point, the Schlieffen Plan has already failed. The Germans were unable to take France out of the war quickly and decisively, and then focus on much bigger, more populous Russia. So we watched the Schlieffen Plan fall apart here in the waning months of 1914. So this is the question that must be answered in your summary for your notes on 28.3. How was the Schlieffen Plan meant to work, and why did it fail? With the French halting the German advance at the Battle of the Marne, the Western Front was established there in the boundary lands between Germany and France, in Belgium and in Luxembourg. The Marne sets the anchor point for what becomes this race to the sea. Both armies move north, trying to outflank the other, knowing that if they can get around the opposing army before they reach the North Sea, they can continue their invasion. However, neither army is able to get far enough ahead or far enough around the opposing forces to successfully turn that Western front line, and the Battle of Ypres ends the race to the sea. And it basically anchors the Western Front, and the Western Front remains a roughly static line spread out between the Marne and Ypres. At this point, a revision of the war plans is called for. Realizing this is no longer going to be a quick and decisive war, the belligerents, that is, the opponents on both sides, start increasing their war production. They start ramping up their industrial capacity to produce materials for an extended war. And at the same time, in the media and in the political arena, they begin campaigns of propaganda to vilify their opponents, spreading falsehoods and misinformation to create a caricature of their opponent that is this evil villain that must be defeated in the name of all that is good and noble. And both sides do this to their opponents. The other thing that happens here as the war settles in along the Western Front is we begin what is called a war of attrition. This is a conflict in which the goal is to wear down and exhaust your opponent rather than to win strategic victories. Initially, Germany and the Schlieffen Plan had strategic victories in mind: a quick, decisive strike, the capture of Paris. By the second year of the war, it is no longer strategic victories that people are trying to win. In these battles, the goal is to kill as many people, destroy as many materials, disrupt as much production capacity as possible, and to just wear down and exhaust your opponent. And this is the nature of trench warfare. This is modern warfare. This is industrialized warfare. This is the first war that takes place on a large scale in which both sides are fully industrialized post-industrial revolution. And the horror of trench warfare very quickly becomes clear. And that horror is amplified by barbed wire, an industrial invention, machine guns like the Maxim gun, gas weapons, thanks to the chemical advances of the Industrial Revolution, tanks, a British invention, difficult to use initially, but increasingly effective as later 20th century wars take place. Disease was devastating. The circumstances in the trenches were wet, muddy, cold. Troops were packed close together, sanitation was terrible, and disease was rampant. And then add to all of this the nonstop artillery shelling by big guns that were miles away from your position, day and night. The shells never stopped falling in and around your trench. This is the question here, and we see it very easily as the trench war of attrition settles in along the Western Front. What things led to years of deadlock?